Pick it up. That's where you belong. Tell me your regional director's name. You heard me. Pick it up. You're causing trouble in my restaurant.
Sir, he asked for correct change.
I'm only asking for fairness.
Mr. Brooks, I'm terribly sorry.
Wait, you know him?
I own this restaurant now.
You got money? Or did you wander in here looking for scraps? The words cut across the dining room so sharply that forks stopped halfway to mouths. Calvin Brooks stood at the counter of the Rosewood Grill in Buckhead, Atlanta, wearing a faded canvas jacket, dusty work boots, and a plain ball cap pulled low over his brow. He was 57, black, quiet, and tired in the way men get tired after carrying more than anyone can see. Across from him, Travis Miller, the floor manager, stared like Calvin had tracked mud across a church aisle. "Coffee," Calvin said, "and a slice of pecan pie. That's all." Travis looked him up and down, slow, deliberate, jacket, boots, hands. "Face, sure," Travis said. "Let me guess. You'll pay in loose change like the rest of them." A young cashier beside him stiffened. Her name tag read Emily Carter. She was maybe 24, with nervous eyes, and both hands resting on the register, like she needed it to hold herself steady. "Sir," she said softly, "he already ordered." Travis did not look at her. Calvin reached into his wallet and placed a $20 bill flat on the counter. The bill was clean, real, ordinary, but Travis picked it up between two fingers, as if it had been pulled from a gutter. The room changed. A woman in a cream sweater glanced over from a booth. An older man near the window lowered his newspaper. Somewhere behind the counter, the espresso machine hissed, thin and sharp, like steam escaping from a wound. Travis held the bill up to the ceiling light. "Where'd you get this?" Calvin's face did not move. "From a bank," Emily swallowed. Her eyes flicked from Calvin to Travis, then down to the counter. Travis rubbed the bill with his thumb, turned it, held it closer. "You people come in here with attitude, buy the cheapest thing on the menu, then act like we owe you the place." Calvin looked at him for one long second. "I asked for coffee and pie. That what you call asking?" Travis said. His voice rose just enough for the nearby tables to hear. Not loud enough to sound out of control. Loud enough to make Calvin the center of the room. That was the cruel part. Men like Travis knew how to humiliate without shouting. They knew how to make silence do the dirty work. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. Calvin saw that. He saw her fear. He saw the diners watching and pretending not to watch. He saw the small moral decisions happening at every table. "Look down, stay quiet, let it pass." Travis opened the register with a hard snap. He counted out change, slowly, then slid a few bills and coins across the counter. Calvin looked down. The amount was wrong. He had given $20 for an $8.50 order. There should have been $11.50 back. There was $7. Calvin lifted his eyes. "This is short." Travis smiled. Not a friendly smile, a locked door. "Maybe you miscounted, I didn't." Behind Calvin, someone shifted in line. A man cleared his throat, annoyed at the delay, not the disrespect. Travis leaned forward. "Take your change and move along." Calvin did not move. "I'd like the correct change." The smile left Travis's face. For the first time, the room felt the real man underneath the uniform, cold, small, angry because he had been questioned. He stepped around the counter and came close enough for Calvin to smell coffee on his breath. "You're lucky I'm serving you at all," Travis said. "Plenty of places around here would have sent you right back outside. The second you walked in looking like that." Emily whispered. "Travis, please." His head snapped toward her. "One more word, Emily, and you can finish your shift unemployed." Her face went pale. Calvin looked at her. Just a small nod. Not blame, not disappointment. Mercy. Then Travis reached back into the register, scooped up the missing change in coins, and held it in his fist. The dining room went still. Even the old man by the window stopped pretending to read. Travis looked Calvin dead in the eyes. Then he threw the coins onto the floor. They struck the tile and scattered. Nickels, dimes, quarters. One coin spun in a bright circle before falling flat. Travis pointed down. "There, pick it up." Calvin looked at the coins. He did not bend. He did not speak. And Travis, feeling powerful in a room full of cowards, leaned closer and said the word that would cost him everything. 3 hours before those coins hit the floor, Calvin Brooks sat alone in a corner office on the 23rd floor of a glass tower in downtown Atlanta. The city stretched beneath him in clean lines and cold light. Traffic moved along Peachtree Street like slow red blood through concrete veins. Inside the office, everything was quiet. Too quiet. On his desk sat a stack of folders. Acquisition reports, lease agreements, employee rosters, health inspection summaries, customer complaint logs. 31 restaurants, all newly folded under Brooks' Hospitality Group. The deal had closed 3 days earlier. $62 million, the largest purchase of Calvin's career. Most men would have celebrated. Champagne, cameras, a press release with smiling executives and silver scissors cutting a ribbon. Calvin did none of that. He sat with his reading glasses low on his nose, turning pages with hands that still looked more like a mechanic's than a CEO's. Broad palms, old scars, a thin burned mark near his thumb from a kitchen fryer back when he was 19 and washing dishes for minimum wage. His assistant, Natalie Foster, knocked twice and stepped in. She was 48, sharp-eyed, steady, and one of the few people who could tell when Calvin was about to do something his public relations team would hate. "Mr. Brooks," she said, holding a tablet against her chest. "The announcement is scheduled for Friday morning. Marketing wants final approval on the venue. They're recommending the Midtown flagship." Calvin did not look up. "Cancel my afternoon." Natalie blinked. "Your whole afternoon?" "Yes." She studied him. Then she glanced toward the coat rack by the door. There it was, the old canvas jacket, the one with the frayed cuffs, the one she hated. Her mouth tightened. "You're going out again." Calvin closed the folder in front of him. "I'm going to Rosewood Grill." Natalie exhaled through her nose. Not surprised, just worried Calvin. He looked up then, not as a boss, as a man who knew exactly what she was about to say because she had said it before. "That location has a strong sales history," she said it carefully. "High lunch traffic, good margins. The regional reports are clean. Reports don't smile at people," Calvin said. "Reports don't decide who belongs." Natalie held still. She had worked for him long enough to know the sentence behind the sentence. Calvin Brooks did not trust numbers by themselves. Numbers told him what people bought. They did not tell him what people endured to buy it. He stood, walked to the coat rack, and pulled down the jacket. Faded brown canvas, worn at the elbows. A small oil stain near the pocket that had survived a dozen washes. Natalie watched him put it on over his plain gray shirt. "You know someone is going to recognize you eventually." "Maybe. And if they do, then I learn how they treat the owner." He reached for a ball cap from the shelf. "But before that," he said, pulling it low, "I learn how they treat a stranger." That was the whole point. Calvin had built his company on a simple belief. Hospitality was not decoration. It was not lighting, or tablecloths, or the price of wine. Hospitality was how a person felt when they had less power than everyone else in the room. His mother had taught him that. Lena Brooks cleaned hotel rooms in Savannah for 27 years. She used to come home with swollen feet and a smile she saved for her children. When Calvin was 12, he watched a hotel guest drop a towel on the floor in front of her and say, "That's what you're paid for." His mother picked it up. She did not cry until they got home. Calvin never forgot. Now, decades later, he owned restaurants in 5 states. He signed checks bigger than the house he grew up in. People called him sir before he entered a room. But he still remembered the sound of that towel hitting the floor. That was why he went undercover. No cameras. No entourage. No warning. Just an old jacket, dusty boots, and the kind of car no valet rushed to park. Natalie followed him to the door. "At least take Marcus from security." Calvin gave her a tired smile. "If I take security, nobody shows me the truth." She wanted to argue. She did not. Instead, she held out a thin folder. "Then take this. Final acquisition packet. Property list. Regional contacts. If anything goes sideways, call Linda Harper directly." Calvin took it and folded it once before sliding it into his inside pocket. Natalie noticed. "You're going to wrinkle a $62 million document. It'll survive." He picked up his keys from the desk. Not the Mercedes keys. The Honda keys. Natalie looked at them, then at him. Same routine? Same routine. 20 minutes later, Calvin's 10-year-old Honda pulled into the parking lot of Rosewood Grill in Buckhead. From the outside, the restaurant looked beautiful. Stone facade, tall windows, trimmed boxwood hedges, a brass sign polished bright enough to catch the afternoon sun. Inside, guests sat under warm pendant lights. Jazz drifted through the glass. Servers moved between dark wood tables with practiced smiles. It looked welcoming. It looked safe. Calvin sat in the car for a moment, watching through the windshield. Then he stepped out. Canvas jacket, dusty boots, ball cap, watch, no title, no protection. Just a man walking toward a front door, hoping his own company knew how to recognize a human being before it recognized a name. The front door opened with a soft brass chime, and for 1 second Calvin felt the restaurant exactly as a guest should feel it. Warm air, low jazz, butter and rosemary drifting from the kitchen. A place built to make people loosen their shoulders. Rosewood Grill had the kind of dining room that made money feel quiet. Dark hardwood floors, cream walls, heavy chairs, framed black and white photographs of old Atlanta streets, cloth napkins folded like small white flags beside polished silverware. Calvin paused just inside the entrance. Not long enough to draw attention, just long enough to listen. A server laughed softly near table 5. A man in a blue blazer complained about a wine pour. Somewhere in the kitchen, a pan hit metal and someone called out behind. Normal sounds, working sounds, human sounds. Then Emily Carter looked up from behind the counter and smiled. A real smile. Not perfect, a little tired, a little cautious. But real. Good afternoon, she said. Welcome to Rosewood Grill. Are you dining in today? Calvin stepped forward. Just coffee and a slice of that pecan pie if you have it. We do, she said. It's actually my favorite thing here. Her voice had a trace of relief in it, as if kindness cost her something in this place, but she kept spending it anyway. Calvin noticed that. He noticed everything, the small tremor in her fingers as she tapped the screen. The way her eyes moved toward the hallway behind her, before she finished the order. The way she stood a little straighter every time footsteps sounded from the back. That'll be $8.50, she said. Calvin pulled a 20 from his wallet and laid it flat on the counter. Emily reached for it. A hand came down over hers. Hard. Fast. She flinched before the skin even touched. I'll handle this one. The voice came from behind the register. Travis Miller stepped out from the back hallway wearing a white dress shirt, a dark tie, and a manager's name tag pinned slightly crooked. He was 42, thick through the middle, clean-shaven, with the tight smile of a man who had learned how to sound polite while being cruel. Emily pulled her hand back. He already ordered, Travis. I heard him. Travis did not look at her. His eyes stayed on Calvin. Then they moved down. The jacket, the boots, the cap, the hands. And Calvin watched the decision happen. Not suspicion based on behavior. Suspicion based on appearance. It was quiet, almost invisible, but it was there. Travis picked up the 20 and turned it between 2 fingers. You eating here? Calvin nodded. That's what I asked for. Travis leaned one elbow on the counter. You sure you're in the right place? The jazz kept playing, but the room seemed to pull back from the sound. Emily's face tightened. Travis, she whispered. He ignored her. Calvin kept his voice even. I'm in Rosewood Grill. I'd like coffee and pie. A couple near the window glanced over. The woman's fork hovered above her salad. Her husband looked once, then looked away with the practiced speed of someone who had chosen comfort over conscience before. Travis held the 20 up toward the light. Can't be too careful, he said. With what? Calvin asked. With cash. The answer came too fast, too rehearsed. Emily's cheeks flushed. She opened the drawer under the register and pretended to look for receipt paper, though there was already a full roll in place. She needed something to do with her hands. Calvin saw shame move through her like a shadow. Not guilt, fear. There was a difference. Travis rubbed his thumb across the bill. Where'd you get this? From a bank. Travis gave a short laugh. People say all kinds of things. Calvin looked at him. Are you saying the bill is fake? I'm saying we've had problems. What kind of problems? Travis's smile sharpened. Your kind of problems. That landed. Emily went still. At table 4, the woman in the cream sweater looked down at her lap. Her phone was in her hand now. Not recording yet, just ready. Calvin heard his mother's voice, somewhere deep in memory. Don't let somebody else's ugliness make you forget who you are. So he stood there, still, breathing slow. The whole room waited for him to become what Travis expected. Angry, loud, easy to blame. He gave them none of that. I paid for coffee and pie, Calvin said. That should be simple. Travis's jaw moved. For a second, his face showed something raw. Not anger exactly. Recognition. He understood Calvin would not bow for him. That made things worse. He turned his head. Emily, get the counterfeit pen. Her eyes widened. Travis, it's a 20. He snapped his fingers. Pen, now. The sound cracked through the room. Emily reached into the drawer with shaking fingers and handed him the pen. Travis dragged the marker across the bill slowly, making a performance of it. The line came back clean. The bill was real. Everyone close enough saw it. Everyone knew. Travis capped the pen and dropped the 20 on the counter, like it had dirt on it. Well, he said, lucky you. Calvin did not touch the bill. Emily looked like she wanted to disappear. And behind Calvin, the line had gone silent. No one defended him. No one challenged Travis. No one even said, that's enough. Calvin stood in the center of a beautiful restaurant and understood something colder than insult. This was not one bad manager having one bad day. This was a room trained to survive by looking away. Travis opened the register. The drawer snapped out. And the sound was almost like a starting gun. The register drawer sat open between them, full of clean bills and bright coins. And Travis Miller acted like every penny in it belonged to him. He counted slowly, too slowly, a 5, 2 ones, a few coins. Then he slid the money across the counter with the tips of his fingers. Calvin looked down. The mistake was plain. Not a small mistake, not a rushed mistake. A choice. He had paid $20 for an order that cost $8.50. The change should have been $11.50. Travis had given him $7. Calvin lifted his eyes. This is short. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Emily's hand tightened around the receipt paper until the edge bent. She knew. Her face said she knew before her mouth ever could. Travis leaned back against the counter and folded his arms. No, it isn't. Calvin kept his voice calm. The order was $8.50. I gave you 20. That leaves $11.50. Travis shrugged. Maybe math isn't your thing. A small sound came from somewhere in the line. Not laughter. Not quite. A nervous breath someone tried to swallow. Calvin heard it. So did Emily. Her eyes glistened now, not with tears exactly, but with the strain of standing beside wrong and being told to call it normal. Travis, she said quietly. He's right. The drawer shows an $8.50 sale. His head turned toward her. Slow. Dangerous. What did you say? Emily went still. I just mean the change should be one more word, Travis said. Each word clipped clean. And I'll write you up before dinner service. Her mouth closed. That was how power often worked in ordinary places. Not with fists, not with shouting, with schedules, with write-ups, with the quiet threat of losing rent money. Calvin saw Emily retreat into herself. Shoulders in, chin down, breath shallow. He did not blame her. That made him angrier than if he had. He turned back to Travis. I'd like the correct change. Behind him, the man in line shifted hard and sighed. Come on, the man muttered. Some of us are on lunch. Calvin did not turn around. Travis smiled again. There it was. That locked door smile. See? You're holding up paying customers. I am a paying customer. Then act like one. The words struck harder because they were dressed as customer service. Travis had learned that tone from somewhere. Maybe from a bad boss. Maybe from a father. Maybe from years of getting away with it. He stepped out from behind the counter. The movement changed the room. Before, there had been a counter between them. A polished strip of dark wood, enough to pretend this was business. Now there was nothing. Travis came close. Too close. Calvin could see a tiny coffee stain near his tie knot. Could smell aftershave and old anger. You want to accuse me of stealing? Travis asked. I said the math is wrong. You walked in here dressed like you're about to ask for spare change, and now you're making demands? Calvin's breathing stayed slow. In through the nose, out through the mouth. He had sat across from bankers who tried to cheat him with smiles. He had negotiated with landlords who called him son while raising rent on his first restaurant. He had heard worse and survived it. But survival was not the same as acceptance. "I'm asking for what I'm owed," Calvin said. Travis leaned closer. "You're lucky you got served at all." That sentence moved through the dining room like cold water under a door. A woman at table 3 lowered her fork. Her husband stared at his plate. An older man in a tan sport coat looked at Calvin, then at Travis, then back down at his soup. Everyone understood. Nobody moved. That was the part Calvin would remember later. Not just Travis, the stillness around him, the agreement hidden inside silence. Emily whispered, "Please don't do this." Travis snapped his fingers toward the front. "Marcus." Near the host stand, Marcus Reed straightened. He was 39, broad-shouldered, wearing a black polo with security stitched over the chest. He had been watching from the beginning, jaw tight, arms crossed. His eyes said he did not like this. His feet said he was not sure what courage would cost. "Come here," Travis said. Marcus walked over slowly, not eager, not proud, just pulled by a chain he could not see. "Keep an eye on this gentleman," Travis said, putting poison around the last word. "Make sure he doesn't cause trouble." Marcus looked at Calvin. For one brief second, apology passed across his face. Then he stepped behind Calvin's left shoulder, not touching him, just close enough, a shadow with a paycheck. Calvin looked at the counter, at the wrong change, at Emily's lowered eyes, at Marcus standing where he had been told to stand. Then he picked up the coffee. Travis slid toward him. The cup hit the saucer too hard. Coffee spilled over the rim and spread in a dark circle. Travis smiled. "There you go," he said. "Enjoy your visit." Calvin took the cup. His hand was steady. Then he looked Travis directly in the eye. "What's your full name? Why do you need that?" Travis Miller tried to laugh, but it came out thin. Calvin held the coffee cup in one hand. The saucer trembled slightly from the liquid Travis had spilled, but Calvin's fingers did not. "Your full name," Calvin said. "First and last." Travis looked toward the tables, as if the audience might give him back the confidence he had just lost for half a second. A few faces turned away. The woman in the cream sweater stared at her phone now, thumb hovering near the record button. Travis straightened his tie. "Travis Miller," he said. "Floor manager. 6 years." He tapped his name tag twice. "And I'll still be here when you're long gone." Calvin looked at the tag, then at Travis's face. Something changed in his eyes. Not anger, not fear, a decision. 6 years, Calvin said quietly. "Got it." He picked up the saucer, turned away from the counter, and walked toward a small table near the back wall. Marcus Reed remained a few steps behind him for a moment, unsure whether to follow. Travis gave him a look, so Marcus followed, not close enough to touch, close enough to remind. Calvin sat with his back to the wall. He set the coffee down carefully, wiped the edge of the saucer with a napkin, and placed his phone face down beside it. The pecan pie arrived 2 minutes later. Emily brought it herself. Her steps were small, controlled. The plate shook in her hand just enough for the whipped cream to slide against the crust. "I'm sorry," she whispered when she reached the table. Calvin looked up. She looked younger now. Younger than 24, like a child caught between telling the truth and staying safe. "You don't have to apologize for him," Calvin said. Her eyes filled. "I should have said more. You said enough to show me you knew the truth." That made her look down fast, because kindness can hurt when someone has been bracing for blame. Behind the register, Travis watched them, his arms crossed, his jaw locked. He did not like that Emily had brought the plate. He did not like that Calvin was sitting calmly. He did not like calm at all. Calm meant he had not won. Calvin took one bite of the pie. The crust was buttery. The pecans were toasted just right, a little salt, a little smoke. The kitchen had talent. Real talent. That mattered to him, because bad leadership had a way of making good work invisible. For 12 minutes, Calvin sat there and observed. He watched a server named Rosa refill water at table 7, with a tired smile and swollen feet. He watched a line cook peek through the kitchen window, then disappear when Travis turned around. He watched Marcus stand near the host stand, hands clasped in front of him, eyes on the floor. Most of all, he watched the diners. People with money, people with time, People who knew something wrong had happened and decided it was not their wrong to carry. That was the quiet wound in the room. It was not only cruelty that damaged people. It was the comfort of those who witnessed cruelty and protected their own peace. Calvin finished the pie. He drank half the coffee. Then he stood, picked up the plate and cup, and carried them back to the counter. Emily reached for them. "Thank you," Calvin said. The pie was excellent. Her face softened for the first time. "I'm glad you liked it." "Hold on," Travis said. The words stopped her smile before it could fully form. Travis stepped forward and planted both hands on the counter. "You're not leaving yet." Calvin set the cup down. "I paid. I ate. I'm done." "Yeah, well, I've been watching you." Calvin said nothing. Travis tilted his head. "Sitting back there on your phone, looking around, watching the exits. I was eating pie." "No," Travis said. "I know what casing a place looks like." The word struck the dining room hard. Casing. Like Calvin was not a customer. Like he was a threat. Marcus looked up. His expression changed. A flash of discomfort crossed his face, quick but visible. "Travis," he said low, "maybe we should just let him go." Travis turned on him. "I didn't ask you to manage my floor." Marcus swallowed. Calvin looked from one man to the other. He understood Marcus then. Not weak exactly. Trapped. A man who had learned to survive by hesitating at the edge of doing right. Travis pointed toward Calvin's jacket. "Empty your pockets," Emily whispered. No, not loud, but everyone heard it. Travis looked at her. "What did you say?" She took half a step back. Calvin's voice cut through before Travis could attack her again. "You want me to empty my pockets?" "Standard procedure," Travis said. "There is no standard procedure for searching a customer who bought coffee and pie. There is when I say there is." The rooms tightened. A chair creaked. A phone rose. Calvin breathed in once. Slow. He reached into his left jacket pocket and removed the folded acquisition packet. He placed it on the counter. Then his keys. Then his wallet. Travis picked up the wallet first. He opened it without asking. Bills. Cards. An ID he did not bother to read. Because the truth was right there. But he was not looking for truth. He was looking for control. Then he reached for the folded paper. Calvin's hand came down over it. Firm. Still. "I wouldn't open that." Travis smiled. And for the first time, there was uncertainty behind it. "What's in the paper?" Travis asked it like he had a right to know. Calvin's hand stayed flat on the folded packet. The edge of the document stuck out from under his palm, white against the dark counter. To everyone else, it looked like nothing. Maybe a receipt, maybe a letter, maybe a bill. To Calvin, it was the truth. 31 restaurants, $62 million. Hundreds of employees who had no idea their workplace had changed hands 3 days earlier, and one manager standing inches away, proving exactly why the change mattered. "It's personal," Calvin said. Travis leaned in. "Nothing is personal once you bring it into my restaurant." "My restaurant." Emily heard it. Her eyes flicked up. Marcus heard it too. His jaw tightened. Calvin slowly lifted his gaze. "Your restaurant?" Travis smiled, but it twitched at the corner. "You know what I mean?" "Yes," Calvin said. "I think I do." For half a second, something passed between them. Something Travis could not name. A quiet weight. A sense that he had stepped onto a floor that might not hold. Then pride saved him from caution. He snatched Calvin's wallet and shoved it back across the counter. "Take your stuff." Calvin picked up the wallet, then the keys, but left the folded packet where it was. Travis noticed. "Forget something?" "No." The answer made Travis's face harden again. The room had turned completely silent now. Even the kitchen seemed to be listening through the swinging door. A cook in a white apron stood behind the small glass window, frozen with a towel over his shoulder. Travis turned toward the register. "You wanted your correct change, right?" Calvin did not answer. Travis punched the drawer open. The metal spring snapped. He reached in and scooped coins into his palm. Not bills this time. Coins, nickels, dimes, quarters. The kind of change that would have meant nothing to most people in that dining room. But in Travis's hand, it became something else. A weapon small enough to deny. Emily whispered his name, Travis. He ignored her. Marcus took one step forward, then stopped. That step mattered. Calvin saw it. A person's conscience often moved before the person did. Travis closed his fist around the coins and faced Calvin. "You want every cent?" Calvin's voice was low. I want you to understand what you're doing. That made Travis laugh. Loud this time, a brittle sound. I know exactly what I'm doing. No, he did not. He knew how to bully a man he thought had no protection. He knew how to perform authority in front of frightened employees and comfortable customers. He knew how to push until someone either exploded or backed down. But he did not know what Calvin had spent decades learning. That dignity is not something another man gives you, and it is not something he can take. Travis opened his fist and threw the coins. They hit the floor hard, metal on tile, sharp, bright, ugly. A quarter bounced once and rolled beneath a chair. A dime spun near Calvin's boot. A nickel struck the base of the counter and dropped flat. The sound scattered through the room like broken glass. No one spoke. A woman at table 3 lifted her phone. This time, she recorded. An older man in a tan sport coat shook his head, but not at Travis, at Calvin, as if the man standing still had created the discomfort. Emily covered her mouth. Marcus stared at the coins. Travis pointed down. There, pick it up. Calvin looked at the floor. The coins lay around his boots like a challenge. He could feel the eyes on him. Every table, every employee, every person waiting to see if humiliation would bend his knees. He thought of his mother again. Lena Brooks on a hotel floor, picking up a towel someone had dropped just to prove she would. He remembered her hands, red from cleaning chemicals, steady anyway. He remembered the drive home that night. How she kept both hands on the wheel and said nothing until they reached the apartment. How she finally sat at the kitchen table and cried without sound. Calvin had been 12, old enough to understand, too young to protect her. Now he was 57, and the floor beneath him felt like that same hotel floor. But this time, he would not kneel. He lifted his eyes to Travis. The room seemed smaller now, the light sharper, the air thinner. Travis leaned forward, drunk on the silence around him. You heard me, he said. Get down and pick it up. Calvin did not move. Travis's face twisted. Pick it up, boy. The word cracked through the restaurant, not loud, worse, clear. Emily's hand fell from her mouth. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Marcus closed his eyes for 1 second, as if the word had landed on him too. The phone at table 3 kept recording. Calvin stood still. Then he said, calm and quiet, who is your regional director? Travis blinked. The question was so unexpected, it broke his rhythm. What? Your regional director. Name. Travis stared, then laughed. Oh, that's rich. You're going to call corporate on me? Calvin waited. Travis spread his arms. Go ahead. Call whoever you want. Linda Harper, regional director, knock yourself out. Calvin reached into his pocket and took out his phone. 3 taps, 1 call. He held it to his ear. Everyone watched. The line connected. Calvin spoke 6 words. Linda. It's Calvin. Rosewood Grill now. Then he hung up. Travis stared at the phone in Calvin's hand, and for the first time all afternoon, his smile did not know where to go. Then he forced it back. First name basis with Linda Harper, he said. That's cute. No one laughed. The restaurant had changed shape around him. The same tables, the same warm lights, the same scent of butter and rosemary. But the air had shifted. It had gone thin and watchful. Calvin slipped the phone back into his jacket pocket and looked down at the coins still scattered across the tile. He did not touch them. Travis hated that. He hated the stillness. He hated the way Calvin stood like a man waiting for weather to pass. He hated the small doubt now moving through the room like smoke. So he turned toward Marcus. Get him out. Marcus did not move. Travis's head snapped around. Did you hear me? Marcus looked at Calvin, then at the phone in Calvin's pocket, then at the floor. Maybe we should wait, he said. It was not brave enough to fix what had happened, but it was the first thing close to resistance. Travis's face reddened. Wait for what? Some imaginary corporate rescue? Marcus swallowed. He had heard the call. 6 words. No pleading. No explaining. No nervous customer trying to be believed. That was not a complaint. That was an order. I just think, Mark said, we should slow down. Slow down? Travis repeated, louder now. This man came into my dining room, caused a scene, refused to cooperate, and now you want me to slow down? Calvin finally looked at him. Your dining room? Again, that question. Quiet. Simple. Dangerous in a way Travis could not understand. Travis pointed toward the front door. You have 30 seconds to walk out, or I'm calling Atlanta police. Emily gasped softly. An older woman at table 6 lowered her phone and whispered to the person beside her. He paid for his food. Her friend touched her wrist. A warning. Not here. Not us. Calvin heard it without turning. That was how silence protected itself. It came dressed as caution. It called itself wisdom. It said, wait, stay safe. Do not make it worse. But for the person being humiliated, it was already worse. Calvin pulled out a chair from the nearest table and sat down. Slowly. Deliberately. I'll wait, he said. The words landed like a stone dropped into deep water. Travis stood frozen. Then something ugly moved across his face. He stepped close to the table, lowering his voice so it sounded like a threat meant only for Calvin, though half the room still heard it. You think this is going to scare me? I've handled people like you before. Calvin folded his hands on the table. That's what worries me. Travis blinked. Calvin's tone was not angry. That was what made it cut deeper. He was not fighting Travis. He was measuring him. Emily watched from behind the counter, tears drying on her cheeks. She wanted to speak, her throat moved. Nothing came out. She thought of her rent due Friday, her little brother's community college books, her mother's medication. She hated herself for thinking of those things while a man was being degraded 10 feet away. But Calvin somehow understood that too. He did not look at her with accusation. That made her feel worse. Near the host's stand, Marcus shifted his weight. His hands hung open at his sides. He was remembering his father now, though no one in that room could know it. His father, a retired postal worker, telling him when he was young, son, a uniform never makes a wrong thing right. Marcus had nodded back then. Easy words when nothing costs you. Now the cost stood in front of him. Travis pulled out his phone. I'm done, he said. I'm calling police. Before he could tap the screen, headlights swept across the front windows. A black SUV turned into the lot fast. Too fast for a regular lunch guest. The tires crunched over gravel near the curb. The engine cut. For one breath, nobody moved. Then a door slammed. Sharp. Final. Heels struck pavement outside. Click, 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 fast and hard. Every eye turned toward the entrance. Travis had tried to compose himself. He straightened his tie, smoothed his shirt, put on the face he used when regional management visited. Reasonable. Professional. Wronged if necessary. The front door opened. Linda Harper stepped inside. She was 55, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a low bun, a navy blazer, and reading glasses perched on top of her head. Her face was calm in the way storm clouds are calm before lightning. Linda, Travis said quickly, stepping forward. Thank God you're here. I can explain what happened. She walked past him, did not stop, did not even look at him. Her eyes moved across the room once. The coins on the floor, Emily's wet face. Marcus standing stiff near the host stand. The customers with phones half raised. Then she saw Calvin, sitting at the table in the faded jacket. For 1 second, her expression broke. Fear. Not fear for herself. Fear of what had been allowed to happen. She crossed the room and stopped in front of him. Mr. Brooks, she said, clear enough for every person in the restaurant to hear. I am so sorry. I came as fast as I could. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything Travis had not known. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Mr. Brooks, he said. Linda turned toward him then, and the warmth in the restaurant disappeared. Linda Harper looked at Travis Miller the way a doctor looks at a test result nobody wanted to see. This is Calvin Brooks, she said. Her voice was level, not loud. That made it worse. Founder and chief executive officer of Brooks Hospitality Group. Travis stared at her. The words did not enter him all at once. They struck, bounced, came back, struck again. Calvin Brooks, founder, chief executive officer. Linda took one step toward him. He is also the new owner of this restaurant, and every restaurant in this chain. The room went dead, not quiet. Dead. The kind of silence that makes a coffee cup sound heavy when someone sets it down. Emily gripped the edge of the counter with both hands. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marcus took one slow step back, as if the floor had shifted beneath his shoes. At table 3, the woman recording lowered her phone just enough to look over it with her own eyes. Travis let out a short laugh. No, he said. No one answered. He looked at Calvin, then at Linda, then at Calvin again. No, that's not possible. Calvin stood, slowly. He walked to the counter, picked up the folded packet Travis had wanted to open, and unfolded it with care. The paper made a small, crisp sound in the silence. At the top sat the Brooks Hospitality Group letterhead. Below it were property names, entity transfers, closing dates, signatures, legal language dry enough to put a room to sleep on any other day. But not this day. Calvin placed the packet flat on the counter. I closed on Rosewood Grill 3 days ago, he said. Along with 30 other locations. Travis's eyes dropped to the page. His face changed, red drained to gray to pale, his lips moved without words. Linda looked at the coins still scattered across the floor. Then she looked at Emily. Did he throw those? Emily froze. Every survival instinct in her body told her to be careful. She had spent too many shifts learning which truths got punished. Her hands trembled against the counter. Travis turned his head slightly, a warning, a last attempt at control. Emily saw it, then she saw Calvin. He did not nod, he did not push. He simply looked at her as if her voice belonged to her. That small respect gave her enough strength to borrow. Yes, Emily said. Her voice cracked, but it held. He threw the change at Mr. Brooks. He told him to pick it up. Linda's eyes did not leave Travis. And the word? Emily closed her eyes. A tear slipped down one cheek. Yes, the word itself did not need to be repeated. It was already in the walls, in the phones, in the faces of every person who had heard it and sat still. Travis lifted both hands. Linda, wait. I didn't know who he was. Calvin's head turned. There it was. The confession hidden inside the excuse. He did not say he had not done it. He said he had not known. Linda's face tightened. You didn't know who he was, she repeated. I mean, if I had known he was corporate, obviously I would have handled it differently. The sentence landed harder than the insult. Even the older man in the tan sport coat looked up then. Calvin stepped closer, stopping a few feet away from Travis. That's the problem, Calvin said. His voice was still calm. But now every syllable had weight. If you had known who I was, you would have smiled. You would have handed me the right change. You might have called me, sir. Travis swallowed. Calvin looked down at the coins. But the next black man who walked in wearing work boots and an old jacket would have gotten the real you. Travis's chin trembled. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, Calvin said. You did. No one moved. Calvin continued quieter now. You did not disrespect the owner of this restaurant. You disrespected a man you believed had no power. That is worse. That is who you are when you think there are no consequences. The words filled the room, but they did not feel like revenge. They felt like judgment. Clean. Necessary. Long overdue. Linda pulled out her phone. Travis Miller, you are suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. You will surrender your keys, your access badge, and your manager credentials before leaving the property. Travis stared at her. Suspended? Now, Linda, come on, 6 years. I've been here 6 years. Linda's voice sharpened, and in 6 minutes I have seen enough to question all 6. Travis looked around the room, searching for someone to help him. The diners looked away. The same silence that had protected him now abandoned him. Marcus stepped forward. Travis turned to him. Marcus, tell her this got out of hand. Marcus's face was tight with shame. It did, he said. Because you made it that way. Travis flinched. Emily let out a breath she had been holding for years. Travis reached into his pocket with shaking hands and pulled out a ring of keys. They clanked on the counter. Then his badge. He unclipped it slowly, stared at his own name, and placed it beside the keys. The badge looked smaller without the power behind it. Linda nodded toward the door. Marcus, please escort Mr. Miller out. Marcus stood straight. Yes, Mom. Travis looked at Calvin one last time. His eyes were wet now, but not with sorrow, with fear. Calvin picked up one nickel from the floor, placed it beside the badge, and said, Choices have weight, Travis. Even the small ones. Then Travis Miller walked toward the door, and every step sounded like something ending. The door closed behind Travis Miller with a soft chime, the same gentle sound that had welcomed Calvin into the restaurant less than an hour earlier. Now it sounded different, final. For several seconds nobody moved. The jazz had stopped between tracks. The espresso machine sat silent. Even the kitchen staff behind the swinging door seemed afraid to breathe too loudly. Calvin looked at the empty space where Travis had stood. Then he looked at the room. Phones lowered, eyes dropped. Forks rested untouched beside half-finished plates. A few customers looked embarrassed now that the danger had passed, as if shame were safe only after someone else had paid for it. Linda Harper stood near the counter, phone in hand, already typing messages to legal, human resources, and corporate communications. Her fingers moved fast, but her face stayed hard. Marcus returned from the entrance alone. His shoulders were pulled in. His eyes stayed on the floor. He stopped near the host stand. "Mr. Brooks," he said. "I'm sorry." Calvin turned to him. The apology hung there. Small, late, still, not worthless. Calvin walked toward him, stopping a few feet away. "You watched the whole thing." Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir. When he told you to search me, you hesitated." Marcus swallowed. "I did. That means something in you knew it was wrong." Marcus's eyes reddened. He looked older than 39 now. Not in the face, in the spirit. "Yes, sir, but you stepped forward anyway." The words were not loud, they did not have to be. Marcus looked down again. "I was afraid of losing my job." Calvin let that sit. Not as an excuse, as a human truth. Fear had rent behind it, children sometimes. Medical bills, car notes. Fear was not imaginary, but it was not innocent either when it helped wrong happen. Calvin's voice softened. "I understand fear, Marcus. I really do. But an order you know is wrong does not become right because someone with a name tag gives it." Marcus closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, they were wet. "I should have stopped him." "Yes," Calvin said. "You should have," Marcus nodded once, hard. Like the truth hurt, but he needed it. "I won't forget this. I hope you don't." Calvin did not fire him. He did not forgive him fully either. Sometimes mercy was not pretending nothing happened. Sometimes mercy was making a man carry the lesson without crushing him under it. Calvin turned to Emily. She stood behind the counter with both hands pressed flat against the wood, tears still drying on her cheeks. She looked as if one more word might break her open. "You spoke up," Calvin said. Emily shook her head quickly. "Not enough. You spoke when it could cost you something." Her mouth trembled. "I was scared, I know. I need this job. I know that too." She looked at him then. Really looked. Not at the jacket. Not at the boots. Not even at the power now filling the room around his name. At the man. Calvin stepped closer to the counter. "There are people in this room who had less to lose than you did," he said. And they said nothing. The sentence moved across the dining room like a slow wind. A woman at table 3 wiped under one eye. The older man in the tan sport coat stared down at his napkin as if it had become very interesting. Calvin did not look at them with cruelty. That would have been easy. He looked at them with disappointment. That was harder to bear. Then Calvin bent down. Emily moved fast. "Mr. Brooks, please, let me get those. I've got it." His knees cracked softly as he lowered himself to the tile. 57 years old. A long life in the body. He picked up the coins one by one. A quarter near the counter. A dime under the edge of a chair. A nickel beside his left boot. A penny almost hidden against the baseboard. No one spoke. The room watched the owner of the company kneel on the floor and gather what had been thrown at him. But this time, it was different. He was not kneeling because Travis told him to. He was kneeling because he chose what the moment would mean. That choice belonged to him. When Calvin stood, the coins rested in his palm. $11.50, the exact amount he had been owed. He walked to the counter. On the corner sat a glass tip jar with a few bills inside and some loose change at the bottom. Calvin dropped every coin into it. The sound was sharp at first, then soft. Metal against glass, then stillness. "These belong to the people who actually earned them," he said. Emily covered her mouth again, but this time the tears were different. Linda looked up from her phone. "I'm closing this location for the rest of the day." Calvin nodded. "Pay every hourly employee for the full shift." Linda typed it in. "Done. And no one in this building is to delete footage, messages, schedules, or complaint records." Linda looked at him. Her face changed. She understood where his mind had gone. "You think there's more?" Calvin looked at Emily. Then Marcus. Then the silent dining room. "I know there's more. Outside, Travis's car started somewhere in the parking lot. Inside, the restaurant remained still. But something had already begun moving. Not loudly, not visibly. Something under the floorboards. The first crack in a system that had been silent too long. 6 weeks later, Calvin Brooks pulled the same 10-year-old Honda into the same parking lot at Rosewood Grill. Same canvas jacket, same dusty boots, same plain ball cap. But the restaurant was not the same. The brass sign by the door had been polished. The boxwood hedges were trimmed clean. Through the tall windows, afternoon light poured across the dining room in warm gold. The place had been closed for 2 weeks after that day. Not for a paint job. For the truth, Linda Harper's investigation found more than one cruel afternoon. There were old complaints, ignored emails, shift notes that should have gone to human resources and never did. Customers who had been treated like problems because of how they looked, how they dressed, or how much money someone assumed they had. Travis Miller was terminated for cause. So was Daniel Price, the district manager who had buried complaints instead of facing them. No quiet resignation, no soft landing. Their names went into the records, attached to the choices they made. Calvin did not release every detail to the public. He was not interested in humiliation as entertainment. But he made the outcome clear to every employee in the company. Abuse hidden by paperwork was still abuse. Silence dressed as procedure was still silence. And dignity would not depend on a guest's title. The video from that day had already spread across Atlanta, then across the country. People argued about it online. Some were angry at Travis. Some were angry at the customers who watched. Some admitted quietly that they might have stayed silent too. That part mattered to Calvin most. Because the story was never only about one manager. It was about the room. It was about all the rooms. When Calvin stepped inside, the bell above the door chimed softly. A young host looked up. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Rosewood Grill. Table for one?" No hesitation. No scan of the jacket. No judgment hiding behind the smile. Calvin nodded. "The counter is fine if you have room. Absolutely. Right this way." Calvin followed him past the front windows. A couple sat with their grandson near the wall. 2 nurses in scrubs shared coffee at a small table. An older man read the paper with reading glasses low on his nose. The room felt different. Not perfect. No place was perfect, but lighter, safer. Behind the counter stood Emily Carter. Her name tag had changed. Emily Carter, assistant manager. She looked up from the espresso machine and froze. For a heartbeat, the old day came back across her face. The coins, the silence, the fear. Then she smiled. Not the nervous smile from before, a real one. "Mr. Brooks," she said. "Emily, coffee and pecan pie? You remember. I remember everything about that day." Her voice softened on the last sentence, but it did not break. She poured the coffee carefully and set it down on a clean saucer. No spill, no slide, no small act of disrespect disguised as service. Then she placed the pie beside it. Calvin took a bite. Same buttery crust, same toasted pecans. Some good things had survived the storm. "How's the team?" he asked. Emily leaned one hand on the counter. "Better. The new training is hard. People don't get to hide behind polite words anymore. They have to talk about what respect actually looks like." Calvin nodded. "And the reporting line? 3 calls in the first month," she said. "All reviewed by the outside board. All resolved. No deleting. No burying." Across the room, Marcus Reed refilled water at a table. He was no longer security. He had asked to move into guest services and start over. Calvin had allowed it, after training, after accountability. After Marcus stood in front of the staff and said what he had failed to do. Now Marcus caught Calvin's eye. He gave a small nod. Not proud, not forgiven completely, but trying. Sometimes healing looked like that, not applause. Just a man choosing better the next time. Near the front door, a brass plaque had been mounted at eye level. "Every guest in this restaurant deserves dignity. If you experience or witness anything less, call this number." Calvin finished his coffee and pie. He left a $20 bill on the counter. "Keep the change," he said. Emily laughed softly. This time the sound carried no fear. Calvin stood, tipped his cap, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped at the plaque and touched the raised letters with his thumb. Then he stepped into the late afternoon sun. He had not come back to prove he owned the place. He had come back to make sure the place no longer owned anyone's dignity. And maybe that is the question this story leaves behind. If you had been sitting in that dining room, watching those coins hit the floor, what would you have done? Would you have stood up? Or would you have looked away? Be honest with yourself. Because sometimes the measure of who we are is not what we do when power is watching. It is what we do when someone without power needs us to see them.